Hey everybody, I'm Tracy Thompson, and this is a brand new podcast called Listen to Prison. We're really excited that you're here today, and we hope to share a lot of stories with you over the coming months. I'm going to start by saying a little bit about Listen to Prison and how we got started. And my son and I, Zane Thompson, who's here with me today, we'll hear from him in a moment. As we were trying to put this podcast together, we realized that we really needed a mission statement and a vision statement to guide us. And so I'm going to share our mission statement. So the mission statement of the Listen to Prison podcast is to share the stories of some of the nearly 2 million men and women in our jails and prisons, regardless of their crimes and without addressing their guilt or innocence. The vision statement of Listen to Prison is for listeners to develop a deeper understanding of the lives of imprisoned people and gain an awareness of the forces at work in our society that fill our prison pipelines. We worked on that statement to help us in thinking through why we were doing this podcast. And it was sort of Zane who came up with this particular idea, and I'm going to turn it over to him to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I was driving home one day and I was just thinking of my mom and kind of, what's just the changes that have happened in her life as far as, she raised me and my two brothers, had a long career in law. She went to Yale. She's a published author. She was in the Navy, single parent, of course. Just a very, she is a decorated individual and she has a lot of knowledge and talent and skill. So it was more so, she became an empty nester all of a sudden, and that was a kind of a barrier to overcome, right? There was a lot of just free time now, and it was just like, all right, what's the purpose? So considering she spent time in prisons like Greenhaven, right?
Right.
And what was the other one?
In Louisiana, in some of the prisons in Louisiana. Yeah. So Greenhaven is New York-based prison, New York prison.
Yeah. So, going in there, and you were actually speaking with inmates during that, right? Like, what was that? What were you doing with that?
Yeah, so at both Angola and at Greenhaven, we went in and we just spoke to prisoners about their experiences. We weren't there to help them with their cases or discuss their guilt or innocence. We were just there to talk about bigger ideas about justice and, justice and freedom and incarceration and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And was it ever about steps to take after they get released?
Yes. Yeah. There was, especially at Angola, it was about, sort of preparing them to transition into the free world after so many years of incarceration.
Right. So
how to avoid coming back to the prison.
Yeah. And I didn't even know the specifics of that when I was just thinking of this when I was driving home one day. I was just like, how can we encapsulate everything that she has done in her life, right? She's always had an interest in crime and things of that nature. So she's always been on the TV every time I would get home from basketball practice from school. It was, first 48, this, that, and the other. So I was just thinking about all these things and how can we wrap it up into one. She's a great storyteller, obviously, like I mentioned, published author, and how can we just wrap it up into one impactful product, I guess. And so that's Listen to Prison was born essentially that day, with kind of the goal in mind to give these people, right, although they have no freedom anymore as far as walking the streets and being amongst civilians, they can still speak, and they should. Their voices shouldn't be in jail. And the other thing, too, is we understand the sensitivity of this matter. It's like, families are affected by these people that we're speaking with. And the whole point of this is not to dig into the ins and outs of their crimes and plead for their innocence or their guilt or whatever the case. That's not it. It's more so what's going on day to day in their life. What is it kind of, get a taste of what it's like in prisons. Also hear about their upbringing, right? Hear about what were their goals when they were younger. What was their upbringing like? What did the household look like? So on and so forth. Just really get these details about these inmates, regardless of their crime, and just hear them out. It's just sort of like it's something that's not done really,
Right.
right? You don't hear from these people until they're released or whatever the case.
Right, and a lot of the true crime world is focused on victims, and that's an important
Yeah.
voice. And we wanted to focus on the people who are left in the prisons after crimes happen. So we really focused on how can we get these people's voices out, and we started to look at oral history as we talked to people. One of the friends I talked with, she said to me, she's a faculty member at SUNY Albany. She said, "Well, this sounds like oral history," and as a librarian, and having been that being part of my background, I thought that makes a lot of sense, oral history as what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. And so we've sort of adopted 4 principles that are guiding us that come from the oral history tradition. And those are that our stories will be first person testimony in the subject's own words, a guiding but open ended prompt structure, which I'll talk about as we talk about the process here, centering the voices that are excluded from the mainstream narrative, and a refusal to reduce the subjects to a single act or label. So all 4 of those, as we looked at the oral history tradition, those really resonated with us, that's what we are trying to accomplish. We really want to, we're not coming to this with any kind of judgment. We're not doing any research on these people. We're not looking at we're finding them. Maybe I'll talk a little bit now about the structure that we're using, the process that we're using. So when Zane brought this idea to me, we had some back and forth on what the outcome would be, what the result would be. And one of the things, as I was saying, we committed to the idea that we're not doing background research on these people and seeing anything about the crimes they've committed. So we are finding them through a website that's called Write a Prisoner. We'll post that for you so you can see how to access that. And at the Write a Prisoner website, we started in the very beginning. This was back in February of 2026. We're now in July, almost August of 2026. At the very beginning, we looked at Write a Prisoner and we started to think, well, let's start with people on death row. And ultimately we decided against that. So where we are now is we're simply looking up any prisoners who are willing to have an exchange with us. And because they're on Write a Prisoner, that's how we can gain access to them. So in the beginning, we thought we were going to use snail mail, and we do use snail mail for some of it. People can reply using snail mail, but we quickly found out through the Write a Prisoner that we could use a system called Securus to email the prisoners. So that requires that you buy stamps and that they have stamps to be able to email with you. And we just wanted to, first we needed to see, do we have a source of content? Are we going to get enough responses to be able to create oral histories that are, that have some meaningful. And we found out there was, we got a lot of responses to our email. We're using the Securus platform, which is a little bit difficult because it's not as I guess modernized as a lot of the current day email platforms. You can't keep a thread. You have to have separate emails every time you communicate with someone. So, but we're maintaining all that information, and we're getting a lot of back and forth with a lot of the prisoners. And so what we're going to present in our first episode will be a prisoner called Troy from New York State, and we're going to present his story the way he tells it to us. I'm not doing any editing. I'm not doing any rewriting, or, I'm not looking into his crime. I'm not looking into him as a person. I'm just taking him for what he provides. And that's what we're going to do with every prisoner. We're going to take what they provide to us, and we're going to read it the way they provide it. Yep. And you'll be able to see that text. And if we've got written replies, you'll be able to see that. We'll try to make that available as well.
Yeah. So basically, we send them a questionnaire, and the questionnaire is really just to guide them on, their response. Right? It's an open-ended prompt. So I'll throw the questionnaire up on the screen here, but you can see it's. What was your childhood like? What was the home life like? What were your goals? How was school? And then you kind of get into what's it like in prison? What's the first thing you think about in prison, right? What are some misconceptions amongst the public? This, that, and the other. And then, if applicable, we'll talk about release a little bit. What are your goals upon release? Is there anyone you'd like to apologize to? Do you have any words of wisdom you want to share? So it's really, and sometimes we'll get responses that's like, 1, question and then answer. 2, question and then answer. So they're going in order of, how we listed the questions on the questionnaire. Sometimes people like Troy, the first episode we're going to do, August 15th, he is a writer, right? He spends a lot of his time writing, and so he took this opportunity to sort of not do it that way. He gave us a full
narrative.
Narrative of what things have been like, and he set the bar high. So we send them this email. It says, "Hey, prisoner, you've been selected to participate in this. Just so you know, this will be going out to the public. Like, it's consensual. They know what's going on. They, by responding, have allowed us to air their story, and a lot of the inmates are very excited about this opportunity, right? As anyone would
Absolutely.
be, because they're getting, this doesn't happen every day.
People love to talk about themselves, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
that's a known thing.
Yeah, of course. So, and hopefully we send that to them, and hopefully they respond. And many of people have, like my mom was saying, that's sort of the reason we started this in February, just to proof of concept it, see if people would be responding, saying, "What the hell are you thinking? What are you doing?" Right? This is insane. The response has been overwhelming. It's been, even people that are electing not to participate are like, "What you're doing is great. Like, this is awesome." And so that's cool, and that's nice. But that was important for us because we really wanted to make sure that it wasn't being perceived in a way by them that was offensive or exploitative or anything like that. And so the response has been great. People do have, inmates have the choice to stay anonymous. That's one thing we said, that they don't have to put their name in it, and we won't share their name or image or facility. So yeah, that's sort of the how of how
so far of all the responses we've got, only one has asked to be anonymous.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah,
right? People, I mean, for the most part.
And what do we have? How many responses do you think we have?
I would say at this point probably 40.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's really been really, really great. And some episodes we may have short pieces where we can do 2 people in one episode if they didn't respond. Because again, these are intended like an oral history. The questions are guiding but open-ended, and we've even asked, when we send this out to everyone, we tell them you can use our questions or ignore them. I mean, it's up to them what they want to do.
Right. So along the way, we're gathering statistics, right? I mean, this is just means of log keeping and information tracking, helps us stay organized. But the goal wasn't to find a common theme, but what we're realizing is over these 40 responses, a lot of people are saying the same
themes.
thing.
Yeah, there are some themes, and we'll raise that. And the statistics are just a natural outcome of this work, but we're not. This isn't any kind of science social science experiment. This is really just oral history, and the statistics that we're gathering may start to, over time, create a picture, give us a sense of sort of some patterns and things that are happening. And we may or may not use those statistics in the future, but they may help us. They may help inform us about how to structure things in the coming years.
And I'd rather have them than not. I'd rather track that than not. Obviously, this is the quote unquote first episode. This is more so just an informative. Here's what is going to happen. So we're thinking of posting once a week to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, video and audio, and just sharing these stories from these inmates. So we're excited to share it all with you guys, and
then now the work begins, really, because now we've got to take all of this information and bring it out to you.
Yeah.
So again, as Zane was saying, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, starting August 15th, you'll hear about Troy.
Yep. He's the first one. Like I said, bar is high.
Absolutely.
I mean, just a wild response. And so next to my mom there on her left, there's a snail mail response. We haven't read it yet. We haven't even opened it. She's going to do that one second. And then so when she's reading that one on the second episode, that's the first time any of us are going to hear what's inside of that.
Yeah, we decided to do that. Like, let's see what this is like to just read it together without us having read it first. Everything else we've already read, but this one we decided to hold off because we just got it and we're going to read it together.
Yep. So that's that. We're excited and
hope you'll come back.
Hope everyone enjoys. Yeah.
August 15th.
Yep.
Peace.